The photographic training video you are about to watch is part of the Photo Education Network, created to provide one-stop shopping where professionals and amateurs alike can go to find photographic-related training videos, workbooks, and audio tapes. Topics include everything from posing and lighting to weddings, from senior portraiture to children's photography. To view individual titles and to read about the instructors, visit the Photo Education Network at www.photoeducation.com, or to receive a full catalog of available titles, call the Photo Education Network toll-free at 1-800-510-1765.
In the first segment that we talked about, we laid the basics of the sales cycle, of the basic sales approach that needs to be considered by each and every studio owner. Now we come to the part where we will dissect and break down the components of the sales process and how the person who comes in contact with you reacts. Let's begin with the initial phone presentation. When someone calls a studio responding to an ad, there have to be several presuppositions that the designer must assume. First of all, she must assume that there's an important reason why someone called the studio. And the question that she has to find out, is it because they think that we're a commodity? Does she think that she can call from studio to studio and get pricing and think that she's comparing apples and apples? Now, I would suggest to you that the reason why people call the studio is because they do not know there is a difference in the photography that's available, in the style of portraiture that's available, and that there is a major difference in their selection process. Because a woman would not call that store asking, how much is a red blouse? Because she would know that she would have to look at it to make that ultimate decision. So, first response is that when they're calling on the phone asking about photography, you must assume they think we're all the same. As a result, the only thing she has to be concerned about is how much. So she has put you in the category of Levi jeans. It doesn't make sense, obviously, that we would pay retail price for Levi jeans because Levi jeans go on sale. And we wait until they go on sale when we normally make our purchases. They are designed that way, they are merchandised that way, and they're marketed that way. Now, in that analysis and that first assumption is where you have to gain and maintain control of the conversation. And again, reiterating and revisiting my first point about communication is you don't want to gain control of the conversation by talking at them, because you will make the mistake that a poorly trained salesperson will make, is assuming that I just give them information and somehow or another that is fulfilling their real question. So think about this in terms of gaining control. First of all, interview to develop a relationship. Interview them to find out where they are coming from, what their past experiences have been, what they have liked, what they have disliked, what they're looking for. Then is when you will be able to give them a presentation, for lack of better words, an answer to the question that they're really looking for. So let's assume that you have taken the time, you have vertically merchandised your studio, you have a variety of products and services and prices for her to choose from, and your job is to help analyze and present her with the product she's really looking for. Now, first of all, in the phone conversation, there are a couple things that cause phone conversations to fail. One of which is sound. It is highly possible that you could be a very gifted designer, but that you would have a voice that does not sound well on the telephone. So studio owners, if they are considering having a person come to work for them who will be engaging clients on the phone, something that I recommend that they do is conduct your first interview with your prospective employee in a phone interview. And if she does not sound well, speak well, present herself well, and you don't have a good feeling of how she sounds, remember, that's how the customers are going to feel about your studio. So there's no sense in you going any further in that conversation and the looking for that employee without that. Do not hire a resume. Or as one guy said, don't hire the business suit that they're going to wear. They can come in and look really good. They can have a nice resume. They may be okay in person. Hire them based upon their skill and their possibility of being successful in the area that you want them to use. Now keep this in mind. All the advertising dollars, all the marketing dollars have one purpose, and that's to make the phone ring. Now one of the best educators in telephone techniques is Greg Stangl in Illinois, and he has a complete series on how to conduct that. I'm not going to try and overstep those teaching techniques, but I will help balance that in terms of what is taking place in that at that sales moment. Now, let's think about this a little bit. In the communication, in the spoken word, 15% of response is the actual words we use. For example, if our language is peppered with ain'ts and colloquial expressions and professional jargon that doesn't mean anything, we use words like blow-ups, and we use words like proof, and we use words like hang, and we use words like big, prince, and words like that, we will be destroying the sales presentation just by the words. Now, about 30% to 25% of communication is how it sounds. For example, if I speak at a very rapid pace and I'm talking on the telephone, it becomes very, very hard for people to understand and hear what I'm saying. Normally, when you're speaking on the phone, you want to break the technique down to where you have breathing space. You should speak from the stomach up. You should slow your pace down so that there is distance between each word. Because electronically, it does not respond well to words that are run into each other. Now, why would I say that? First of all, if somebody is in a hurry, impatient, they normally what? Speak fast. And as a result, even yourself, when you're speaking to someone like that, do you feel like you are important to them or interrupting them? What happens on the telephone is she thinks that you don't have time for her. Now, it may be your normal speaking. I speak quickly by nature. But I try when I'm speaking with a client on the phone to slow down because I do not want them to feel that I don't have time for them. And that one little moment is all it takes to have someone say, well, they're too busy, I'll call someone else. They didn't seem to have time for me. And we just simply made the mistake of not knowing I need to slow down my pace on the phone. I wasn't projecting. Another problem that comes around is what the words and the feeling feels like. For example, let's say that you are doing production work and you're up against a deadline and you are very logical in what you're doing at this point in time and you're going through and you're trying to get this thing prepared and ready. UPS is coming at 4 o'clock. The phone rings. And your first response is, oh my. And so you basically unwittingly transmit that feeling to her that you, once again, are interrupted. And whether we want to realize it or not is that people are very, very sensitive to what we sound like and what we feel like, and especially women. They are wired this way. They're extremely sensitive to that. They can be wrong, but they're not mistaking what it sounds like, and they're not mistaking how they feel about it. Now, let's talk about the other 50% of communication that is lacking on the phone, of which we rely upon very much, and that's body language. body language that helps people gravitate towards the sincerity of what you're saying, to measure whether or not your words are okay. I'm real interested in you. You're very important to me as a client. And really, in all honesty here, we'd really like to do a good job for you. Body language. The words were all right. You understand? I didn't make a mistake in the words. The difference between that body language is you are important to us. You really are. And we want to take the time to do it right. Do you understand the difference? It was, words are similar, but the body language conveyed a whole different feeling, the look on the face, all of those aspects. Now, I've been taught in sales that when a woman walks around, she has an antenna, and she is looking and reading you, and she gives you seconds to either win her or lose her. And that in actuality, that you may have lost the sale in the first few seconds based upon several key impressions. Let's start with the phone. You sound like you're in a hurry. You sound like you don't care. You sound like you've been interrupted. You're not smiling. You're not happy. She makes a decision. Because remember the rule that we talked about last time? They first pick the person. Then they'll talk to you and allow you to influence their decision in the products. So rule number one, what do I feel like? What do I sound like? And the studio owners that are looking at this, don't be dismayed that you have someone to whom you like and you have all their body language. You see their body language, you see those things, and you simply put someone on the phone who does not sound good. And that's all there is to it. So the selection process and the training process is very careful. The other part of it is, do we have them trained for the goals that they want to have in that first contact on the phone? Well, what do you want them to achieve? Are you a studio that does a design consultation or a tips conversation where the people come and view images to help them make their selection? How do you get someone in when a lot of studios say, well, they're very resistant to coming in? Let me give you a couple questions that may answer that question. Someone calls, they ask about family portraits. And so you begin the conversation and you find out from them that they've never really dealt with a professional photographer. They're just looking for photographs. They're looking for gift photographs. And so you express to them that you have a design consultation that you would like to have them come and see at the studio and spend a few minutes. So you just say that. I will guarantee you that the odds-on are, as their first response will be, why do I have to do that? Nobody else is requiring me to do that. Now, they're not saying no. They are stalling, but you haven't given them a real reason as to why it would benefit them. And remember, one important thing in sales and in presentation, it's all about selfishness. I'm using a negative term. In other words, the client is looking for someone to serve them. And they will do a number of things that you ask them to do if there is a legitimate, personalized reason as to why they should do that. In other words, how will it benefit me? What do I get out of this? Why should I do that? So the question comes down. And they've talked about the family portrait. So let's ask some awkward questions. Questions with which is going to create a little bit of wonderment in there. Do you know exactly the story or the feeling that you would like to have conveyed on your portrait? Now, they're wondering, what do you mean? I thought you just put me in front of a camera, you put me in front of a background, you flash the lights. I mean, what do you mean? Now, what did we actually say at that point in time? We put it in the form of a question. But what did we say about our studio? We've introduced a couple ideas about something that is very unique. We didn't have to say that we tell stories or that we convey different feelings. We've asked her how she wants to feel about that. Nobody else is doing that in the marketplace. We are. So she says, well, do I really have to come in? The answer should be absolutely not. Do you know exactly how to dress and appropriately colorize your portrait in the selection of your clothing so that it will look very well? Is there anybody in the group that may have some weight concerns that we could advise on how best to dress to slenderize and make themselves look more appropriate. Do you know how to apply your makeup properly for a professional photograph? Do you realize you do not wear your makeup the same as you would every day for having a professional photograph done? Do you see what we're doing here? We're asking her probing questions that now are raising some doubt about why this should come in. And now we're coming down to validate a couple points. And she says, well, no, I didn't really know. At that point in time, you present the answer. That is exactly why we created our design consultation and our tips appointment. So that people would be able to properly plan how to colorize their photograph through the proper clothing, what clothing flows best and looks best together, how to wear proper makeup. But more importantly, in our studio, to show you a number of portrait styles that you could select from. Most studios today just have a station, and they come in and they flop you down from a background. We, however, being a designer studio, have all aspects. We have home furnishing opportunities for you, beginning with traditional classic backgrounds. And they are all different prices, and they are all affordable based upon the amount of time and talent that's involved in them. And we want you to make a selection based upon what you like, what you want, not what we decide for you that we're going to do. Now, may I ask you a couple more questions? Is there a convenient time with which you would be able to drop by the studio and visit us? Now, understand there will be no pressure for you to make an investment because the clients that commission us choose us based upon our style and our personality. Now, as you can see, I've led you through some wordsmithing here that answered the questions. Whereas typically when we're doing this, a salesperson is told, we do design consultations. We do a tips appointment. So as a result, you just tell them what we're going to do and why we do it. Remember the rule that we talked about last time? The more you talk, the less they believe you. The more they talk, the more they believe you. Isn't that interesting? Now, here's another rule. If they say it, it's the truth. If you say it, they doubt it. That's the reason why learning to interview and tell your story in the form of questions and interviewing is so profound. There's a big difference in being able to present yourself as an artistic, sensitive, capable studio. Now, one thing I could do is say, look, let me tell you something about our studio owner. He's a master photographer. He's very gifted. He's very talented. He's very good. I mean, people all over town are displaying his portraits in their home, and people come from all over the world to choose him. Okay, that's not a bad statement. But however, a gifted designer, after interviewing someone, would probably say this: I can see how important choosing a skilled portraitist is to you. Are you looking for someone who's going to have the creativity and the photographic skills to really create an original portrait for you? As you can see, this opening conversation and the beginning of the telephone call is where everything becomes crafted from here on out. And as we walk through this, and as you look at these steps and these components, we will see how the same technique begins in the telephone, is transferred to the front room in this reception. The interview that we're talking about and the control of the interview that we're talking about is predicated on a couple of known truths. One of which is that there is nothing new in the sales cycle. That most everything is predictable. The outcome is predictable. And the process is predictable. And remember something very important about sales and business anyway, is that it is all about stage. I mean, stop and think about the business aspects of it. Is that a lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, I'm kind of a low-key person, and I just kind of am who I am. Well, what's interestingly enough is that over a period of time, they may become dissatisfied with the type of clientele that they're attracting. And if they were actually to step back and analyze, they would probably find that they had attracted customers who are just like they are, who dress just like they do, who think just like they do, because they're comfortable with that. Whereas other people who come into the business arena are what I would call a consumer-driven client. In other words, they broaden their opportunities to interface with people by taking the time to understand professional training aspects, to develop an understanding of how people respond psychologically, and that they would open themselves up to be able to market to a broader spectrum of clientele other than just the people who are just like they are. For example, let's go back to the story of the Jaguar dealership salesman who tried to sell the Kia. Think about what you're really dealing with right there. You're dealing with a salesperson who thinks that they are the ultimate consumer, and that how they shop is how people actually buy. As a result, they limit the possibilities of their sales. And all of us would agree that would not make sense. That would be about like going to work in a jewelry store selling wedding rings, and then the person that's selling the jewelry could only afford a $400 diamond, who would struggle with someone who might spend $5,000 for a single stone, or $10,000 for a set, or $20,000, because they couldn't afford it. And yet I see in the photographic industry this feeling transposed over into the consumer, and we make several mistakes. So now as we go through this concept of interviewing and dealing with it on the phone, let's transfer that into the first contact in the studio. Let's talk about the rule of first contacts, just as a beginning. The first contact a client has with you normally is either a spoken word from someone to them about you, a response to some form of marketing piece that you have presented, 3, or a walk through the yellow pages where they let their fingers do the walking. But think about where they may come from. Now, in that interview process, did you find out where they came from? What was it that caused them to respond? Because that does direct the direction with which you would take that. For example, if she had talked to a happy customer, that means your communication is differently than a person who has never, ever been in a portrait studio, and the high water mark for them was going to Walmart or Target and getting a photograph done. You're dealing with two different clients. As a result, you have to have the skills to interview to find out who am I talking to and what is the background. Now, if you have done an effective job in this initial contact after they've responded to an ad and they made the phone call, and let's say that we were to analyze, let's say that we sent out a marketing piece into the marketplace, but the phone doesn't ring. Where's the problem? Either in the timing, the offer, or the marketing piece. Now, however, we send the marketing piece out and the phone rings, but nobody comes to the studio. Nobody comes in to look at the ideas that we are going to create for them. They don't come in for the tips or the design consultation. They don't come in to talk to us. They don't book an appointment. So where's the problem? In the telephone. So if you're getting a lot of phone calls coming in, but nothing taking place after the fact, you need to analyze what takes place there. Let me tell you a story with a studio that called and wanted some new marketing ideas. I went into the studio, and while we were sitting there, the phone kept ringing, kept ringing, kept ringing, kept ringing, kept ringing, kept ringing. And the fellow was talking about how they were not getting much response, how they did not think they were doing the right marketing. Maybe they needed to come up with some new ideas. And I asked him, I said, does your phone ring like that all the time? And he says, oh yeah, it's just constantly calling. And of course, I had listened to his staff, and I had a pretty good clue as to what the problem may be. So I said, do you throw people out of your studio if they offend you? And he said, why do you ask? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Why would I give you some marketing ideas to make your phone ring more often if you're not doing a good job with the telephone in the first place? Because that's all marketing and advertising does. The phone is king in a studio. And he sat back and he says, so if I'm understanding what you're saying, is that it isn't that we don't have consumers looking for a great photographer. It has to do with how we're handling the phone. I said, yes. Or it could be that you do not have a properly merchandised studio that intrigues them, and your staff don't have anything to offer them and a way to excite them, or they haven't been trained in how to excite them. So we began a series of training with his staff on how to handle this first contact. We transformed his business by learning one thing: how to handle the response to our marketing, not coming up with new marketing. A unique thing about it is, in the marketplace, if you're in a competitive marketplace, understand that every time another studio advertises, your phone rings too. And every time you advertise, you make other studios ring. So at that point in time, understand it becomes a critical issue in terms of who is going to win this verbal rapport game. Now, in saying that, let me break down the sales cycle into its 4 components. First of all, the objective of all initial contacts is to build rapport. Now, rapport is a very, very important word because rapport includes relationship. Rapport includes back and forth conversation. But the most important component of people who have rapport is that element called trust. In sales, the way that you build trust is through interviewing and learning to listen. The third component of the sales cycle is the presentation, or what you say about the products you're offering or the services that you could provide. The last part of a sales cycle is the actual close. And that's where there's an agreement, that the trust level has been set, that they agree that they want to invest in that. They like all the elements that are there. Now let's go to the third first impression. So they've responded well to the advertising. You've handled it well. You've excited them on the phone. They've even made an appointment. Now let's talk about something that is rare but does happen occasionally. It's the studio that does a good job to that point in time, but the people cancel often for that appointment or that booking or that design consultation. They don't show up. It may be possible that you have very, very great skills. You have a great marketing piece. You have good voice and good energy. But it may be that you have actually attracted a clientele who is thinking that you are a higher quality studio than your curbside reflects. They drive into your neighborhood, and let me ask you a question. If you consider yourself a designer studio, have you placed your studio in a place that you would put a gourmet restaurant, an upper-end restaurant for people to come to and visit? This is called curbside appeal. Probably one of the best presenters on curbside appeal I've ever heard was Bruce Hudson from Washington State, as they talked about the effect of curbside appeal. If there is one area that I find lacking in a lot of studios is this concept of we cannot afford a nice studio. We can't afford to go to a better looking place. And that may be true. But let me share with you something that is very important you understand. It limits the amount of product that you can offer to someone. For example, if you are a gourmet cook, chances are you will not get a gourmet price in a truck stop. However, you could sell truck stop prices in a gourmet environment and have people rave about the savings that they had on the special that was run. Now think about that in terms of how people respond. In other words, the curbside appeal, the higher your visual presentation from the front door in and your studio will allow you to offer more products to them and higher levels of services to them than if you had a product that they would consider to be low end and low class. Because the truth of the matter is, if you want to do designer work and they come into an environment that doesn't match that, they won't believe it. There's a believability gap that's inside there, no matter how much money you're saving. And I would love to talk to you about studios that we have moved from home settings. They had the talent, who had the skills, but did not present the right place for someone to be able to see their services and respect it. And I could cite you studios all across Ohio that have moved into new facilities or moved into a storefront or moved things around that would just tell you stories that would inspire you to take a look at how you could grow your business. Some people say, well, the people that come to me, they really like going into the home front. Yes, that's true. They do exist. But understand you have limited your opportunities based upon that. So let's say that you have a great storefront. They walk in the door. The first contact is your display. The studio itself. Have you taken the time to put your studio presentation in such a way that every image is in its proper place? Did you know how to rate your display? You rate your display on a scale of 1 to 10. The first thing that they see at eye level is a 10. And that is your kiosk. That is where you present the best of the best, your highest level of service. You go to the car dealership, you go into a Chevy dealership, you see Corvettes on the kiosk in the showroom, you do not see the Lumina. You always display with your best. You do not use this very, very important surface to just show them ordinary kids with what I call the grip and grins with the bunny rabbits. That's another product line. Because when you come in, you're wanting to establish to them that, one, this is how you properly display this product. Let's assume that you have identified all of these product lines. You have your Impressionist series, you have your Lifestyle series, you have your Beachscapes, and on and on. You have your Reflections collections, you have your handcrafted oil painting heirloom portraits, whatever you've named them. But that's what they come into. What does it sound like? What type of music do you select? Music and sound is very, very important in a studio. Is it soothing? Is it comforting? Have we picked colors and tones that also psychologically rest someone, give them comfort? Now again, going back to that, understand that if you have identified a senior market and you are a senior studio, you also build a studio that matches that look, which may not be restive. It may be funky. It may be modern. It may be speaking to them. Again, you're identifying your target market and you're designing your studio to match that clientele that you pre-selected that you want to work with. Now, they walk in here. Now becomes a critical moment. We have good displays. We have good smells. We have good sounds. We're acutely aware of all the senses that she's coming in. Now comes the moment where she's looking at, and she looks at you. She looks at how you dress. She looks at how you have applied your makeup. She looks at every aspect of you, and she makes an immediate assessment. She places you in the frumpy category, the hippie category, the yuppie category, the professional category, the grandmother category, the little sister category, my daughter category. She's going to put you there on that first one. Now, after she's talked to you a little bit, she may move you around, but she does make an immediate analysis of and places you, catalogs you immediately. Without a doubt, immediately. So now it comes back, have we taken the time to understand the cues? What do we want to say about this? Now, a lot of times I go into studios that the people run around and they're sloppily dressed. They look poor. They don't look like they're successful. They don't look like they're anything that they sound like. And I can assure you that she's cataloged you. Now, what will happen is that, let's say that you put yourself in the frumpy category. Over a period of time, an analysis would show you attract frumpy people. That Mrs. Jones, when she walks in the front door, who's dressed to the nines, who's parked her very expensive, unnecessary car in front of you, who wears a very large, unnecessary ring to impress you, whose husband attends the local club, who spent all these monies, who is interested in status. The moment that she puts you in frumpy, you have lost the potential of the respect. So as a result, in the analysis of the consumer you want to deal with, the normal rule of is, even in the modern society where we're dressing more casual, is that we need to take a look at what is considered good taste casual, and also take a look out there. How is the banker still dressing? How is the professional staff dressing around there? The people that are helping them make major financial decisions. And that should be the dress of the portrait consultant. If he or she is going to be working in the area of financial investment, they need to dress themselves on a par with what is accepted in that locale. And it varies from locale to locale. I'm not here to suggest that there's only one way. But as a studio owner, you have to look at your market area and match that up. There are areas to where the dress is much more casual than other areas. You get into some of the more urban settings, it's still quite formal. Ties and braces is still the standard of the day. And understand that even in the business world today, that the casual attire is reversing itself, and you're seeing more and more suits and ties coming back out again in the business world. Why? Because it affected the sales. So now we've made that first contact. And as we go through this, we're now going to talk about how you gain and maintain control of this from here on out. She sees you, now she gets to hear you. And this is the critical moment. At this critical juncture, not only does she categorize you in terms of what you look like, but there are several things that she's doing simultaneously. First of all, your eyes, your eye contact. She is analyzing you and several things that she is trying to gain a sense of. Am I confident? Are you confident? How are you responding to me? Don Burrell makes a statement when working with people that has impacted me for a long time. And he said that you must remember and imagine that in the chest of everyone is like a sign that's hung around their neck that says, I am important. And this is where a skilled designer really understands the concept of meeting and greeting and comforting individuals. Some studios have actually formalized this presentation. Now, depending upon if you have a private design room or you have an open consultation room, you'll have to develop the style and the technique that will work for you. However, with that being said, she now has to realize that you have planned for her arrival. She is an expected guest, an honored person, and that has to be conveyed. In one of my seminars, I asked this question. If you received a call from the White House that said the President of the United States wants to come to your studio, wants to meet you, wants to confer with you, What would you do differently in the way that you dressed, the way that you prepared your studio? Would you do anything differently, knowing in advance that this important personage was going to come see you? If you would change anything, then I suggest to you that you need to change it for the person who's actually paying your bills. It's very important that designers understand one important aspect of this, and I think that I try to convey this to my studio owners. And I think it's important that not only the studio owners remember this, but even our labs and the people in our industry remember this one very important aspect. A portrait designer does not work for the owner of the business. The owner of the business is not the true employer. It's like if somebody works at a lab or in a studio, they don't work for the owner of that lab. The truth of the matter is that lab owner or that studio owner works for the same person, and that is the retail consumer. They are the one who is paying everybody's wages. They are the one who is investing in all the marketing. They are the one who are buying the new cameras. They are the one who are providing the benefits and the insurance plans for everybody that's involved. And it's a sad day in our today's society that we're forgetting this one very important aspect about business. People are caring less and less about the person that they work for. You walk even into a fast food restaurant today, and they don't care if you're there. They even cop an attitude to you. Even the suppliers and the vendors of our products, that person that's in the back room making that final product has forgotten who that employer is. So what I try to stress with all my studios is that when she calls on the phone, when she drives by your front door, when she walks in that front door, there is the true employer. Every one of us work for that person. They're the one who pays all the bills. And I think it's very, very important that we return to that understanding, because we're losing it in our society right now. We're not there to just somehow or another fulfill our needs. Without that customer, we don't exist. Without their happiness and their self-fulfillment, we are not. And we miss that. So as a result, would you want the President of the United States to feel that you were prepared for him? That you were ready for him? That you knew what you were going to do? That you had set your calendar aside? That you have set appropriate timing aside? Or would you just say, oh yeah, anytime you're in town, just drop by? That's a very, very important thing to remember about setting the stage for you. This is where she determines whether or not you're important or she's important. So as we prepare ourselves for this, I find a lot of times the studios are not even effectively making the appointments for themselves. They make mistakes like not by being prepared to make that presentation. They make mistakes by not knowing exactly where they're going to go with it. They don't have the tools set up. They don't have the lighting set up. They don't have everything ready. As a result, the customer comes in who they kind of felt like they were important, but all of a sudden, they're not. That's okay. They're used to that. Everybody promises good service. Everybody talks about how good it is. And in reality, she says, okay, you're just like everybody else. But a good merchandiser and a good studio won't make that mistake. They're not going to disappoint her and let her down. Because ultimately, that relationship is what you sell.